Hello, everybody, and welcome back to section 18 of our cybercrime course. Today, we're going to be talking about password security and password cracking, which is always a really fun topic, really interesting. But anyway, here we go. So, when we say password, also commonly referred to in cybersecurity as a key, there are essentially three different things we're talking about. There's something you know, which is what kind of most of us think of when we think of password. It's the sequence of letters and numbers that we input in order to access our online accounts. The vast majority of the time, passwords take this kind of form, especially in kind of the global conscience. But there are two other kinds. The first of those two other kinds are something you have, i.e., an item you can carry with you. So, in the traditional sense, this would be like a physical key, like to your front door or to a jail cell or whatever else we use physical keys for. Obviously, physical keys, there's a lot of businesses and other buildings that use for security these days. They have, electronic swiping keys, but it's still something you have that is the password or key to allow you into a secure facility. For cyber operations, there's things like your cell phone, right? So I have it set up so if somebody tries to log into my Google account, not only do I have to put in my password, but then it sends a text message to my cell phone, and my cell phone becomes something I have that allows me to access my Google account from wherever I may be signing into it. In the military, in the United States military, often you have to input your military ID card into a special card reader before you can access many military computer systems. So those are all examples of something you have, something you carry with you, okay? And then the third one there is something you are, i.e. a piece of you. Biometrics, which is what we're going to talk about at the last part of this section. But the most effective security utilizes two or even all three of these. This is referred to as multi-factor authentication. If you have to use two of the three in order to log into some service or access some thing, that's called two-factor authentication, and that is much more secure than just any one of these three. And then if you have to use all three, that's three-factor authentication, and that is the most secure type of all. So multi-factor authentication, more and more services and websites and such are implementing this as an option, and I highly recommend everybody watching this sign up for that, because multi-factor authentication can seriously increase account security. And if it's an option, you should highly consider going with it. Now, when I sign up for a new account on a given, say, website, when I create a Facebook profile, right, it's going to ask me for a username, and then it's going to ask me for a password. And it's going to ask me for a password twice, right? Now, if that website, if Facebook, say, stored somewhere on their servers a giant list of every username and every account password, that would be really dangerous. Because if some bad actor, a hacker, whoever, broke into their servers and was able to obtain that list, they would have free and open access to basically everybody's account, right? So because of that, no serious website or service or anybody that needs a password to gain access, nobody stores that password in plain text, right? What they do is they store the hash of that password. And we've already talked about hashing once or twice in this series, but just in case you haven't watched those earlier episodes or you've forgotten by now, with hashing, you take some input. It could be one letter, could be, a 12-character password, could be an entire book. Doesn't matter. The length of the input doesn't matter. As long as it's, letters, numbers, and symbols, you send it through this crazy mathematical process, and out spits an output that is, to most people just kind of looks like a random series of numbers and letters, right? So once again, though, this is useful for a few different things in cybercrime. One of those is storing passwords. So when I sign up for a new account on Facebook and I input my password twice, it hashes those two passwords. And if they match each other, Facebook knows that I entered the same password twice and I didn't, accidentally mistype one of the two. And then all it has to do is store the hash of that password. So now, if somebody breaks into their servers and steals their list of password hashes, they haven't lost anybody's actual password. They've only lost the hash to that password. And remember, another factor of the hashing process that is kind of beneficial is that you can't work backwards mathematically. The mathematics involved in this hashing process only work one way. So it's impossible, even knowing how that hash was generated, it's impossible to take the output hash that was stored as part of my password and send it back through that mathematical process to get that original input, to get what my password actually is. But now every time I go to log in, I put in my username, I type in my password, and then the Facebook servers only have to say, okay, I'm going to hash this again. Does it match the hash I have stored on file? Yes, then they must have input the same password. I'll let them in. But if I do even a little bit of a change, if I accidentally make an uppercase letter lowercase or the other way around, add an extra letter, forget a letter, whatever, the hash output is going to be completely different. And thus, that service is not going to let me access that account because it doesn't know what I've put in, doesn't know whether I was a little bit wrong or a lot wrong, but it knows I was wrong when I typed in the password that I should have typed in for that account. Now, again, this is kind of a bare minimum level of security so that if somebody breaks into those servers or somebody gains access to that file that has all those passwords stored, they don't actually have the passwords, they just have the password hashes. Now, that is extra security, but it's not perfect. There are still ways to translate those password hashes back into the original password. Now, again, we can't do this mathematically. We can't use the hashing algorithm itself to work from the hash back to the original input. But that doesn't mean we can't crack them in other ways. So the simplest way is to do what's called a brute force. And with brute force attacks, the attacker basically just tries every single combination of letters and numbers until they have some input where the output hash for that randomly generated input matches the password hash for a given account, right? So I might try, A. What's the hash of that? Does that match the password hash? No, then it's not their password. So now I try A. Does hash that? Does that hash match their password hash? If it's yes, hey, we figured out their password. If it's no, we got to try another thing, right? The downside to brute force attacks is that they can end up taking a long time. So remember, the amount of time it takes to guess every single combination of letters and numbers for a given length grows exponentially, right? So there's 26 letters in the English alphabet, uppercase and lowercase, that's 52, plus 0 through 9, that's 62, plus all the special characters, you're looking about roughly 80 different characters between uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and special symbols. Roughly 80 different characters that any given digit of a password could be. Now, to try, if it's a one-digit password, if your password is just, say, uppercase A, to try that, a computer takes basically 0 time at all. That's only 80 different options, right? But 2 options is 80 times 80. Now, it's still not that many options, so a computer can do that in essentially 0 time. 3 options is 80 times 80 times 80. 8 to the third power, or 80 to the third power. Again, we're still looking at not that long. But if we get up to, say, 8 characters, 80 to the 8th power, now that's a lot of options. And it's going to take a modern computer a good long time to try every single combination of letters and numbers with 80 different options for each character and an 8-character password. The problem is, as computers get faster, that becomes easier. So 8 used to be kind of the minimum required for a secure password. As I'm recording this in the the early 2020s, it's probably more like 10 or even 12, because an 8-character password can theoretically be brute forced with a strong enough computer in a reasonable amount of time, right? But if you have a 12-character password, it is essentially impossible to try every single combination of letters and numbers for 12 characters, without taking literally thousands of years for even the highest end computer to guess all those different combinations. Now, does that mean brute forcing is useless? No. Because think about it. If I steal Facebook's password list, and I just have their, 1 billion plus hashes, if I set even my desktop computer to start brute forcing passwords, I'm not going to find every one of the 1 billion plus password hashes in that data set. But if I let my computer run for a few days, a few weeks, I'm going to get, if there's 1 billion different options, I'm going to hit on at least a few of those over time, even with a brute force attack. So this is still can be useful. It's just not the most efficient way of doing things. The better way to do this is to use a dictionary, right? Because people don't choose passwords as a random series of numbers and letters, right? People choose passwords that they can remember. People choose passwords that have some connection to their life, i.e., what if instead of trying every single combination of letters and numbers, let's take out the dictionary and let's just try every single word in that dictionary that is at least however many characters we know a password has to be. So I don't know if this is true or not, I'm picking a number randomly, but let's say Facebook, we know, requires an 8-character password. Well, let's take the English dictionary and every word that is 8 or more characters long, hash all of those, and see if any of those hashes match our password hashes. And a disturbing percentage of people in the United States use some English word that appears in the dictionary as their password. So it was just that simplistic. This is kind of the beginning of dictionary attacks, was just using the English dictionary. Now, if you go online and search, you can find dictionaries for use in these dictionary attacks that are way, way, way more complicated than just the English dictionary at this point. So a good password cracking dictionary at this point is going to have every word in the English dictionary plus Spanish plus German plus French plus, any one of a number of other languages. Plus it's going to have commonly put together words, right? So like Boston Red Sox. Those 3 words put together aren't going to appear in an actual English dictionary, but they are going to appear as one word in a password cracking dictionary, because that is that combines commonly used words to the point where somebody might use that as a password, right? So, if I just put the English dictionary into a list and put it into a Word file, it would be, a few kilobytes, maybe a megabyte or two. I've been able to find password cracking dictionaries that are in the gigabyte plus size. So these things are way larger than just an English dictionary. And because they're larger, they're going to take more time to run. They're going to take more time to hash all those different words and then compare them to the password hashes you've obtained. But it's still a reasonable amount of time. Way more reasonable than a brute force attack would. And a disturbing percentage of people's passwords are going to appear in one of those password cracking dictionaries. Okay. A few other things we can do. Number one is rainbow tables. Okay. So rainbow tables basically say, let's take that dictionary that we have, and if we're going to run it more than once, why go through the computing power of hashing all those different words multiple times? Let's just do it once and then save the hashed outputs. And now, if we get a new set of password hashes that we need to crack, we can just use this pre-calculated password hashes file to compare against our passwords we want to crack file, and any matches will be kind of right there and obvious. A biographical dictionary, this is essentially a dictionary but built for a specific person, right? So if I'm not trying to crack a random person's Facebook account, I'm trying to crack Bob Jones's Facebook account because I know who Bob Jones is. I really want access to his Facebook account. I have the password hash for his account. I need to figure it out. I've run a brute force attack for a while. That didn't work. I've run a dictionary attack. That didn't work. Let's try to figure out information we know about Bob Jones to see if there's something from his life that he has chosen to use as a password. So every single pet's name that he's ever had, if I know it, I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to look up and find every single address he's ever lived at and put in the zip codes and the street names and the street addresses. Every phone number he's ever had, I'm going to put those in. His kids' birthdays, his wife's birthday, any information like that people commonly use as either their entire password or parts of passwords, I'm going to put in there. And then that is going to create kind of a personalized dictionary for that person. And it's not just going to use kind of my inputs. It's going to use permutations of my inputs, right? So if I put in all the zip codes and all the pets' names and all the phone numbers, maybe his actual password is his pet's name followed by his zip code. A good biographical dictionary attack is going to combine those two things and run them as one password option rather than just each one individually. And then finally, there's the golden dictionary. And this is for use in digital forensics, right? So let's say we have arrested Bob Jones for some crime. We've seized his computer. We find an encrypted file on his drive. We really want to know what that password is. There might be a way to extract the password hash. So we know the password hash of the password for that encrypted file. We just don't know what his password is. Well, odds are his password is stored in plain text somewhere on his computer, right? Maybe a text file somewhere. Maybe he input it into a website and used the same password, and his web browser saved that for him, helpfully. There is somewhere on his computer in some file going to be his password saved in plain text. So what we do with a golden dictionary is this is an automatically generated dictionary where we feed in every single computer file on that hard drive. And this process automatically extracts every sequence of letters and numbers from every single file on that drive. And then uses that giant list of every single word, every single combination of numbers and letters on the drive, tries each one of those as a possible password and hashes each one of those entries to see if the hash for any of those matches the hash for the password that we're trying to break into. So there's, again, hashing passwords helps with security. It prevents very easily just capturing some server's password list and then using those passwords to break into accounts. But as you can see here, even if you steal a password hash list, that doesn't mean it's useless to the bad guys. They can still figure out what the original password is, even if they only had the password hash. It just takes some effort. But the more effort you put in when you're creating your password, the less likely the bad guys are going to be able to crack your password. So we're going to talk more in a future subsection about how to create a good, difficult to crack password. But for now, we're going to go ahead and take a break. Thank you so much for watching.